I'm currently completing my PhD in Newcastle University, and I just wanted to share this presentation and share findings and discussions of my current project. Obviously, I have participated in previous conferences, but at this stage, I felt it's, it would be interesting to share the findings, and get the feedback. And also, I was really interested when I saw that this year's TESOL Arabia's theme is about translanguaging and multilingualism in language learning or in teaching, which is this sense of what I'm researching. So I will be talking about the affordances and reflections of enabling translanguaging in the EFL classroom. I'm particularly looking at the Saudi EFL classroom. So this is the context where I am originally a teacher. Okay, I'd like to start with this comic. Just in a bilingual world that we share, it's nice to have that knowledge. So I don't know, I always find this quite funny. Okay, so I'll start by defining translanguaging. I know that most of the people maybe in this room know what translanguaging is, but if not, I just wanted to start with it. I'll be talking about translanguaging as a pedagogy and the aim of my research, the strategy of enabling translanguaging per se, and the approach that I have followed to enable translanguaging in the reading classroom. I'll briefly go over the data collection, the analysis, and then I just wanted to focus on the affordances and the reflections of translanguaging. Okay, so what is translanguaging? It's the ability of multilingual speakers to shuttle between the languages. It's this fluid shuttling, as Gautier said, or Gautier termed in her definition. So it's treating the diverse languages that form their repertoire as an integrated system. In other words, translanguaging allows bilinguals to make the flexible use of their linguistic resources to make meaning of their lives and their complex words. Okay, so the common, misunderstanding is always between code switching and translanguaging. Are they the same? Are they different? Well, the way we look at, from a translanguaging perspective is really different. So, for example, on the right, when someone speaks many languages, we treat it as a linguistic repertoire and a very rich and useful. But someone, maybe like an ESL teacher would treat it as no, the student's using English or she's using Arabic instead of the target language that she should be talking in. So translanguaging is not simply going from one language code to another. It's not a matter of codes as much as looking at this rich linguistic repertoire and how students are making use of it to make meaning. So focusing on which language is being used is not really the norm. It's more of communicating for meaning making. Okay, so the aim of my research is to allow translanguaging as a pedagogy. This has been researched a lot, but in the EFL classroom, and where English is the target language and students are supposed to learn English in a context where English as a, students are not allowed to use their first language or mixed languages because the aim is to learn the second language. This is where it's interesting to look at other, pedagogies to implement. So to study the affordances of translanguaging, I will be defining affordances in a bit. So in a particular context of the South University level students, I particularly look at Group A and Group B. Also, it assimilates students' reflections with the learning in action during and after being able to translanguage. This process made students more conscious about their language choices, where the study endeavors to find the process of students' language in use, obviously resulting in the development of their literacy skills. So the important question is, does this mean that students can use any language they want in the classroom? Well, no, because translanguaging has to be purposeful and strategic, and how to do this is not, it's not as easy, but it takes training, of course, and this has been, research as well. There's a lot of training going on. There's a lot of programs and translanguaging manuals on how to implement it. But to design a collaborative work in the classroom to enable students, to strategically use English and their home languages, or if they do speak other languages, is to engage them in higher order thinking skills, to be, to move from that passiveness to activeness, to develop, which is very important. They develop their metalinguistic awareness, to build their content knowledge, to scaffold literacy skills in English, and also to critical use of home language for academic purposes. So instead of just talking in Arabic for, for socializing, they are actually using it as a tool to learn. Okay, so part of the resources that I talk about and use are this famous book by Garcia, The Translanguaging Classroom. This is an amazing book. I mean, it's it's a must if you're planning to implement translanguaging in your classroom and use it. And also this website, it's a project that was a couple of years ago, and they, in their website, they have a lot of classroom videos, their research reports, and also a lot of translanguaging resources. And they provide two main translanguaging guides. I've attached the website if anyone is interested as well. Another one in the UK, and Newcastle University is part of this project, is the format Translanguaging learning space. And again, they have produced many handbooks for teachers and or for learners. Again, I have attached the link for anyone who wants to make use of these resources. I mean, it's amazing just if you want to just go look and see all the videos and how actual students are enabled to use translanguage. Okay, so just to focus on what I did in my research and how I allowed translanguaging in the reading classroom particularly. So I adapted one strategy from Silicon Seltzer 2011, which is to preview in their home language, in my case, to preview in Arabic, and then read the text in English. Well, this strategy not only just builds their background knowledge or schema about the text, but it allowed for their mental framework to be, to enable them to better comprehend the English text. So, this will result also in the, a better participation in the discussions about the text, because they now understand it and they're connecting their home language to it. And another methodology is to read in English and discuss in any language. So the text was in English, but they were able to discuss in any language. So this was conducted in their collaborative groups. The main thing that I used as well is to reflect the learning. So there was, apart from the collaborative translanguaging task that, weekly, they were able to reflect on this learning as a group. So this was conducted weekly throughout the 6 weeks, and also at the end of the whole period. So each student was interviewed and was given a reflection sheet to reflect on certain aspects of the learning, which was quite interesting, to see the differences. Okay, so just an example of, how I implemented translanguaging to, so this is taken from their original textbook. As you can see, the reading is about Taekwondo for health. So there's the preview, there's, some vocab and quick writing. What I did is, I'll just get the examples. Okay, so I translated the title, and the preview is now both, translanguage. So, I used Arabic and English, and also here. So this is all part of their preview. Again, also here. Okay. So what are the affordances of translanguaging? What I mean by affordances is because this study situates translanguaging as an affordance that provided opportunities for learning in the EFL group environment. And I'm looking at this from the sociocultural lens of viewing the EFL classroom affordances. So the affordances or opportunities became available as resources for students and for additional action. So I present a definition to what I mean by translanguaging affordances, and this is built on the definition of Van Dier in 2004 and 8, that they are the relations between the active learner and the elements in the environment. So I'm looking at, learning as an active process, and this is, enabled through translanguaging. So translanguaging affordances for learning refers to the dynamic relationships between the resources and learners that were enabled through translanguaging in the collaborative reading group. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm just looking at the comments. Could you? Yeah, okay. Can I just go back to the questions at the end, if you don't mind, Dr. Marwa? Thank you. Okay. Analyzing the affordances of translanguaging. So 2 aspects of looking at it, because I captured the affordances during the reading task, and then I wanted the reflection of those affordances after, during, and after, as I said. So there were weekly reflections, and there were reflections at the end of the 6 weeks period. So for number 1, I used group observations, I collected artifacts, and I was there as a teacher and as a researcher. And for number 2, as I said, I captured their reflections through interviews and written feedback. Okay, just an example of the coding and all that. As you can see, the observation codes. So they use translanguaging to build relationship, for task management, to check or confirm their understanding, negotiated content, and clarifying language. This is just a snapshot of the weeks. So I have level A and level B. So level A is the weaker students. Level B is the more intermediate level students. This is an example of the translanguaging episode that was captured in the classroom. So as you can see, S6 starts with very successful man, and then S5 in line 2003 says best, but then food. So I kind of I look at the functions of translanguaging as as an episode. So as you see, I label it for task management, clarifying language. This is part of natural translanguaging, commutative talk, clarifying language. So by using a sociocultural discourse analysis, I look at closely at these translanguaging episodes, and then I categorize them according to the type of talk of Mercier. So there's commutative talk, exploratory talk, which is, where interthinking happens and where learning really occurs during these episodes. I just wanted to just give an example of, what was there in the classroom. So this is taken from the translanguaging episode for negotiating content. Just to give you, an example of how, using both languages enabled them to think and negotiate more. So here they're talking about, so this is part of the preview. They're looking at colors and royalty colors. What's interesting is that they do not know the meaning of royalty, as you can see. So S5 here asks the girls, what is the meaning of royalty? And then S6 tries to untangle that by saying royal. The yellow is royal because there was a picture of, that royal emperor, the Chinese emperor. Yes, then in China, he's wearing yellow. Look at the picture. What about us? Green, black. Okay. So in in line 50, S5 again directs that, to their shared culture. So they're looking at, and they're reflecting that their culture. So what about our culture? And then another student says green, black. So then they come to this conclusion that yes, royalty is royal. And then so royal has, okay. So they come to the conclusion that, okay, this is the main idea, and we know that, what is the meaning of royal. This was captured in their collaborative talk, but again, as I said, during their weekly reflection, part of the questions that I asked them is, what ways did you succeed or do well in the reading lesson, and how do you think you could improve this next week? Another question is, how did your classmates in the group help you learn? Give some examples. So one of the examples is, I've translated here, is that they were able to understand the meaning of royalty and, respect. And also here, saved some time dividing the sections between the group, knowing the main idea and subtopic. So, this allowed them to do it in a collaborative kind of way of learning. This is a snapshot of the reflections. So S2, for example, says that learning languages really helps. For example, I love this language. I know this language in Turkish, but makes me curious to find the meaning in English, in Arabic, and Spanish, in all the languages that I'm eager to learn. So in the two groups, students were not only using their home language or their first language, Arabic, they were also using their very basic knowledge of Turkish, Spanish. And it's really interesting to see how, although they have really minimum knowledge of these languages, but they're actually, because learning became active, they were able to process and connect the languages in their repertoire. So they are, and it's interesting to see how they really reflected on it, and how they used words like, I am active now, I feel like my mind is working, and all of that. So as 6 here in level B's case, for example, in the group discussion, I didn't understand the meaning of a word in English, and one of the girls said it in Arabic, and so it stuck in my head. In that moment, I made a connection. So making connections is very, critical to, to remember and to recall words. So I'm not sure if we have, okay, we do have time. So just a little bit of an overview of the findings. It's because because it's a case study and I'm making comparisons between level A and level B. I noticed that intermediate level or level B students are more comfortable in translanguaging to joke, as opposed to level A. Also, translanguaging and learning. So clarifying language is the highest function in both intermediate and beginner level. So they used it, to clarify their languages. There are more exploratory talk episodes when students were allowed to translanguaging. Checking or confirming understanding was the least function in both intermediate and beginner level. Okay, so it created again deeper meaning making, mediation, internalization. I just want to cover. I just want to move to the the important parts. Okay. Cultural knowledge. Okay. So there, the linguistic repertoire in this case acted as a resource for the learning. And learning became personal, authentic, and meaningful because they were reflecting their cultures, their, even their dialects, because they spoke different dialects of Arabic. So from the interviews and reflections, I'm just gonna, cover some of the main themes. So the first one is empowerment. As some students said that they, it awakened and activated their mind, also gave them their right and freedom to think and talk. So, they feel, I guess, liberated to use all of their languages. Translanguaging helped in learning more vocab and understanding more because they were in group or collaborative work. So again, the role of collaborative learning for vocab and grammar. Students commented that it gave them the right and freedom to think and talk again, empowerment. In beginner level, most students prefer not to mix languages in writing, and instead they think, translate, and phrase internally. So this comes from inner speech and translanguaging, and also from, I guess, because it was only a 6 weeks period, and students are so used to that, monolingual type of learning and thinking. So they still think that it's wrong to mix in writing. Okay. So there's a lot of evidence to, but I don't think I have a lot of time to go over that in a speech and translanguaging. But also creativity was was a theme, that because they were able to translanguage, they were able to creatively mix words in the sentences to make meaning. And there was an example of a student starting by using Turkish and ended, there was English in the middle and then it ended with English. So it's, this is creative. Okay, let's just, yeah. So part of the language policy, because the context that this study was, I used, the language policy for teaching is not to use their Arabic or their first language. So it was challenging for students to make that shift and to be able to, to use all of or make use of their linguistic repertoire freely. Okay. So just to highlight some of the interesting parts in my current discussion, that by allowing the capacity of using all linguistic knowledge to learn languages, this creates the available zone for multilingual students to use translanguaging purposefully instead of using it as a simple switching tool. The findings have showed that one reason to be attributed to purposeful translanguaging is students' metalinguistic awareness. So this was developed, throughout the 6 weeks. So students became more aware of their languages, and therefore they were able to use translanguaging, purposefully and not just as a switching tool. And as I said, I started by allowing it, but actually students enabled translanguaging in their groups. So in this large study, translanguaging is a process of learning. I provide evidence of what it looks like. It's through the active and relational affordances that are created during and after the collaborative translanguaging reading tasks. And finally, affordances are not static. They are dynamic and they are relational in terms of what has been produced in the EFL translanguaging environment precisely. So by activating such resources that are actually available through the collaborative enactment during the reading task, particularly, students were able to, to enable it in their groups, and they were the ones that made translanguaging purposeful. Just to, just a concluding kind of takeaway message is that, by allowing the use of students' full linguistic repertoire when learning English, students manage to use their full extent of linguistic resources as it was activated in the process of learning in their small groups. By activating these resources and developing their metalinguistic awareness, which is critical in learning, pedagogic translanguaging enabled them to benefit from their own multilingualism. However, considering the current discussion and findings, this is, without doubt, a work in progress. And as I said, it's not, a complete work yet, but the arguments presented here are considered a window for understanding the potential of enabling translanguaging in this particular context of EFL Saudi classroom. I think, okay, thank you everybody for listening. And any questions?